and a very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to News9 Live. I'm Kabir Naqvi and you're watching this special broadcast even as the IDF steps up its ground operations in Gaza. We're bringing you this live broadcast from our studios here in the national capital, styled exclusively by none other than Paul Moll. Without much ado, let's quickly focus on what's happening on the 22nd day of that Hamas's onslaught, what has transpired over the last 22 days. Today marks the 22nd day since Hamas carried out those deadly attacks on southern Israel. This is the latest update from the war front, ladies and gentlemen. Israeli forces are expanding their operations in Gaza. The IDF has already announced the same as well. The Israeli forces have announced that its air and ground forces are stepping up their operations in the Gaza Strip. On the other hand, the United Nations Assembly has passed a resolution calling for humanitarian truce. On the other hand, you've got India that is abstained from the UN vote on Israel. That's another update that we're bringing you. United States' military forces carried out fresh strikes in Syria, which the United States now says is in response to the attacks on its troops over the last couple of days by Iran-backed proxies. Now, these two sites that have been targeted by the US military forces are, of course, sites that are being used by the IRGC as well. The Palestinian death toll at this point in time has crossed the 7,000 mark, over 3,000 of them children, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Gaza is facing a near total communication blockade. There's a proper communication blackout. Nothing's going in or out. This is what the IDF has corroborated as well. Meanwhile, the Hamas says that no negotiations particularly are being held with the Israeli authorities, and the confrontations are on with the Israeli forces at various points. This coming out from Hamas. But the Gaza humanitarian crisis, it certainly is widening by the hour. No fuel, no electricity. Now what we're learning is a proper, complete communications blockade and diminishing hope as well. But the Israeli Defense Forces, they've announced that they have killed the head of Hamas's aerial array, Qasem Abu Raqaba. This is the latest coming across from the Israeli Defense Forces. Now, Abu Raqaba was responsible for Hamas's UAVs, the drones, the paragliders, and we saw how the paragliders were in action on the 7th of October when the onslaught actually began. The drones, the paragliders, the aerial detection and defense system, all of this comes under the jurisdiction of Abu Raqaba, who has now been killed. At least that's what the IDF is telling us. As per the Israeli forces, Raqaba took part in planning the October 7th massacre and commanded the terrorists who infiltrated Israel on paragliders, and was also responsible for the drone attacks on the IDF posts. Meanwhile, the Israeli Defense Forces have stepped up their operations in the Gaza Strip. IDF spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari informed that the forces were expanding their ground operations in Gaza, with infantry forces and armored tanks moving in on Friday night and conducting limited raids. Hagari's announcement comes even as the aerial attacks over the Gaza city have certainly intensified. Many people from the Gaza skyline reporting internationally told that this is some of the severest bombardment of the Gaza Strip that the Palestinians have seen in a long time. Israeli forces have repeatedly issued warnings for civilians to evacuate the Gaza enclave, more particularly move towards the south part of the Strip, and residents have been asked to move towards southern parts of the city. Government advisor Mark Regev said that Hamas was going to feel Israel's wrath as the nation starts to pay back with full force. Now, as per reports, internet and phone services are down all across the Gaza Strip, and all other communication channels have been severed as well. Hamas, on the other hand, has said that it is prepared to confront the Israeli attacks in Gaza with quote-unquote full force. Hamas, in a statement, has also said that its armed wing, the Al-Qassam brigades, and all other Palestinian resistance forces are completely ready to confront Israel's aggression with full force. The terror group said that Israeli army will not be able to achieve any victory.
בשעות האחרונות הגברנו את התקיפות בעזה. חיל האוויר תוקף באופן נרחב מטרות תת-קרקע ותשתיות טרור, באופן משמעותי מאוד. בהמשך לפעילות ההתקפית שביצענו בימים האחרונים, כוחות היבשה מרחיבים את הפעילות הקרקעית הערב. צה"ל פועל באופן עוצמתי בכל הממדים על מנת להביא למימוש מטרות המלחמה.
But meanwhile, India abstained from voting on a United Nations resolution that called for an immediate humanitarian truce in the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. The resolution, drafted by Jordan, also sought unhindered humanitarian access to the Gaza Strip, but did not mention Hamas. Now, Canada proposed an amendment to insert a paragraph condemning quote-unquote terrorist attacks by Hamas, and India supported this amendment along with 87 other nations. However, the amendment couldn't be adopted as it didn't receive a two-thirds majority. The Jordan drafted resolution, titled Protection of Civilians in Upholding Legal and Humanitarian Obligations, was adopted with 120 nations in favor, 14 against, and 45 abstentions. Notably, India, along with Australia, Canada, Germany, Japan, Ukraine, and the United Kingdom, abstained from the vote. The resolution referred to Israel as the quote-unquote occupying power and called for rescission of Israel's order for Palestinian civilians, the UN staff, and humanitarian workers to evacuate areas in the northern Gaza Strip and relocate to the south.
On 7th October were shocking and deserve condemnation. Our thoughts are also with those taken hostages. We call for their immediate and unconditional release. Terrorism is a malignancy and knows no borders, nationality, or race. The world should not buy into any justification of terror acts. Let us keep aside differences, unite, and adopt a zero-tolerance approach to terrorism. Mr. President, casualties in the ongoing conflict in Gaza are a telling, serious, and continuing concern. Civilians, especially women and children, are paying with their lives. This humanitarian crisis needs to be addressed. We welcome the international community's de-escalation efforts and delivery of humanitarian assistance to the people of Gaza. India, too, has contributed to this effort. Mr. President, India is deeply concerned at the deteriorating security situation and astounding loss of civilian lives in the ongoing conflict. The escalation of hostilities in the region will only exacerbate the humanitarian crisis. It is necessary for all parties to display the utmost responsibility. Mr. President, India has always supported a negotiated two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine issue, leading to the establishment of a sovereign, independent, and viable state of Palestine, living within secure and recognized borders, side by side in peace with Israel. For this, we urge the parties to de-escalate, eschew violence, and work towards creating conditions for an early resumption of direct peace negotiations. We hope that the deliberations of this Assembly will send a clear message against terror and violence and expand prospects for diplomacy and dialogue while addressing the humanitarian crisis that confronts us. I thank you.
And just like the Indian rep there was talking about, the humanitarian crisis. As the military operations in Gaza continue, there is a worsening humanitarian crisis which is unfolding in the coastal enclave. The United Nations has said that it was concerned that war crimes were being committed on both sides of the conflict. United Nations human rights spokesperson Ravina Shamdasani, in a statement on Friday, said that the UN was concerned about the collective punishment being inflicted on Gazans in response to the atrocious attacks by Hamas. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency, the UNRWA chief, Felipe Lazzarini, warned at a news conference on Friday that basic services in Gaza are crumbling, with medicine, food and water completely running out. The International Committee of the Red Cross informed that medics had entered Gaza for the first time since the outbreak of the war. Medical staff persons have passed through the Rafah border crossing along with trucks carrying medicines and other relief material. Leaders of the European Union have unanimously called for humanitarian corridors and also for a humanitarian pause in the strikes. An official declaration is to be issued in this regard as the two-day EU summit ended in Brussels just on Friday.
As we speak, people in Gaza are dying. They are not only dying from bombs and strike. Soon, many more will die from the consequences of siege imposed on the Gaza Strip. What needs more support? Bakeries, water station, life support machine in a hospital. All this needs fuel to function.
Well, on the other hand, the WHO perspective, the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros, expressed deep concern about the WHO losing contact with its own staff, the health facilities and health workers and the humanitarian partners on ground in Gaza. He called for the urgent protection of all civilians and unrestricted humanitarian access. He stated, and I quote, "We have lost touch with our staff in Gaza, with health facilities, health workers and the rest of our humanitarian partners on the ground," unquote. Now, at the same time, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that the humanitarian situation in Gaza is on the verge of a complete collapse, with consequences that are beyond imagination for more than 2 million civilians. Now, shifting our focus and running down the memory lines, back on October 7th, Kibbutz Birir became one of the first Israeli communities that was targeted by the Hamas terrorists. It's been over 2 weeks now, and dozens of residents remain missing. Shockingly, authorities have yet to identify all the bodies as well.
Security is tight in Kibbutz Birir today, but at dawn on the morning of October 7th, the army was nowhere to be seen. The more than 1,000 people living here were among the first to be attacked by Hamas fighters. They roamed the kibbutz for hours, firing machine guns, grenades, rocket launchers. The Hamas-led terrorists moved from house to house over hours, killing civilians or taking them hostage. Today, this kibbutz is deserted. All what's left are burnt, destroyed houses, and a community in ruins. The Israeli authorities want the world to see this and hear from people who were there.
They burned the house on them, smoke them out. And when they finally opened the doors because they couldn't breathe anymore, they decided who's to live, who's to die.
Rami Gold was part of a small group defending the kibbutz. He said they fired till they ran out of bullets.
And I got to tell you that story because 2 angels came. 2 people from reserve soldiers. I have no idea where they came from. Came to us, gave us ammunition and a cell phone so we can call our families to tell them we're okay. And we kept on going, kept on fighting till it was dark, till the army arrived.
When the fighting stopped, emergency responders looking for survivors found scenes of horror.
She was butchered open. The stomach was small children, a boy and a girl, hands tied to the back and tortured. And I'll say tortured now, yes, I'll say it. The father was without an eye. They took out his eye. The mother a breast was cut off. And while the children were brutally attacked, and they are sitting in the middle and eating the food of the holiday meal that this family was supposed to eat.
Physical evidence of what happened at places around the country arrives here at a makeshift morgue in central Israel. These are some of the up to 200 unaccounted for people. More are still being found.
We are working day and night at shifts, trying to identify each and every one.
This is hard because people were disfigured, mutilated, burned.
We are here doing what we're doing because we think this is a holy mission. For us, identifying the last casualties and all of the civilians that got killed is so important. It's for us, we want to give them their final respect.
Families waiting to bury their dead and those who saw what happened are angry as well as bereft. At Kibbutz Birir, Hamas killed more than 100 people, around 10% of the community. Emergency responder Yossi Landau, who saw the horror, says Hamas cannot be part of the future.
We went through a lot. We went through the Holocaust. We went through a lot. We'll be strong. The world is supporting us. Yes, we want the peace. It's a very important thing, the peace. Yes, but not with Hamas.
Peace seems a faraway prospect, here in the ruins of Kibbutz Birir.
Well, we've talked about what's happening in Gaza. We've showed you reminiscent pictures of the aftermath of what happened in the kibbutz area in southern Israel. Let's also take a look at what's happening in the West Bank area. Israeli troops expelled a prominent Palestinian activist from his home in a key West Bank city. Now, this action followed his hosting of a foreign journalist and a well-known Israeli activist. Critics argue that the military used the Israel-Hamas war as a pretext to remove Issa Amro from Hebron. Have a look at the report.
Friday prayers sound out in Ramallah, the West Bank's biggest city. But the faithful's prayers soon turned to protest against Israel's devastating strikes on Gaza. This woman says her whole family is there.
Shame for what is happening to them. They slaughtered children and women. We do not forgive the Arab countries because they let us down. They did not stand by us. They left us alone. I hope someone will listen. We don't need empty words. We need someone that stands by us.
And more feel that Hamas is doing just that. We are your soldiers, Mohammed Daif, they chant, praising Hamas's military wing commander. The West Bank is not governed by Hamas, but by Fatah, the party that controls the Palestinian Authority, or PA. It's widely seen as weak, corrupt and ineffective, and now more than ever. The PA blames Israel and the West for its fragile legitimacy, growing by the day.
Don't forget, last September, Abu Mazen stood before the General Assembly. He had made it clear that the international community is failing the Palestinians, that the Palestinian Authority has the responsibility and obligation to protect its people, but Israel is making its actions null and void. Israel is putting hurdles.
There are other hurdles for the PA. In the 2 weeks since Hamas's attack on Israel, here in the West Bank, at least 80 people have been killed in confrontations with Israeli forces and armed Jewish settlers. On Thursday, an Israeli raid and airstrike on a refugee camp in the region killed 13 people, including 5 children. Anger here is growing. This group of protesters may be small, but it's enough for the Israeli military to take strong action.
Up on the hilltop you can see Israeli snipers. They've been shooting live rounds of ammunition to these protesters who've been burning tyres and throwing stones. So far the paramedics say 7 people have been shot, including one of their own.
The West Bank is not a major focus of the Israeli military response for now. But with the public losing even more faith in the Palestinian Authority and support for Hamas apparently growing, there is a fear here that that could soon change.
Well, now the U.S. military carried out strikes against 2 facilities in Syria used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, and groups that Iran is backing. The Pentagon has also come out and corroborated this particular information. All of this in response to a spate of attacks against U.S. forces in both Iraq and Syria. Here's a report. Take a look.
Strikes by 2 U.S. F-16 fighter jets on weapons and ammunition facilities in Syria on Friday are fueling fears that the Israel-Hamas conflict may spread in the Middle East. President Joe Biden ordered the mission in retaliation for attacks on U.S. forces by Iranian-backed militia. The Pentagon said the 2 facilities targeted near Abu Kamal, a Syrian town on the border with Iraq, were used by Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps and militia groups. U.S. and coalition troops have been attacked at least 19 times in Iraq and in Syria by Iran-backed forces in the past week.
Let me say this before this council.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told the United Nations on Tuesday that Washington would act swiftly if the attacks by Iran's proxies continued.
The United States does not seek conflict with Iran. We do not want this war to widen. But if Iran or its proxies attack U.S. personnel anywhere, make no mistake, we will defend our people, we will defend our security, swiftly and decisively.
Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and Lebanon's Hezbollah are all backed by Tehran. Biden sent a rare message to Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warning against targeting U.S. personnel in the Middle East, the White House said on Thursday. Iran's foreign minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian followed up with this warning at the United Nations.
I say frankly to the American statesmen who are now managing the genocide in Palestine that we do not welcome to expansion of the war in the region. But I warn, if the genocide in Gaza continues, they will not be spared from this fire.
The United States has already sent warships and fighter aircraft to the region over the last 3 weeks. And on Thursday at the Pentagon, Brigadier General Patrick Ryder confirmed about 900 more U.S. troops are due there.
While I won't talk specific deployment locations for these forces, I can confirm that they are not going to Israel, and that again, they are intended to support regional deterrence efforts and further bolster U.S. force protection capabilities.
Well, other key players in West Asia are certainly feeling that this particular war might just spill over. But for people back at home in Israel, the picture is in stark contrast. The recent Hamas terror attacks have raised concerns among Israelis, which is leading a few to contemplate leaving the country altogether due to worries about their safety and the frustration with their government's perceived inability to protect them.
Shani could be living her happiest life. She and her friend Noah both recently became mothers for the first time. But being safe as Jews in Israel no longer feels like a given.
I'm 33 years old. I never felt like I need to be ready to go. Israel is my country, is my home. It was always like history, was always stories that happened in the past that never happen again. But now, now it's our life.
They want to be able to leave if they have to, so they're organizing paperwork for their babies.
Carmi doesn't have a passport yet, so we're preparing that. Earlier, his vaccinations, that won't hold us up from leaving if we will need to leave.
The women's conversation revolves around the question of whether to stay or go. They say many people are torn.
Israel is made of us, the Jewish people, and if we all leave, nobody will be left. And it's also very sad to think about it.
Here in Tel Aviv, hardly anyone feels like swimming. The mood is somber. Everyone is on edge.
This is our country. We don't have any other place. So, yes, I'm scared, I'm afraid, but I'm not leaving, never.
A lot of conceptions we had and stories that we told ourselves about what gives us security just broke 2 weeks ago. And now we are trying to establish new stories to tell ourselves what it means to be safe here in Israel.
These people are not alone in their concern.
Before October 7, a strong element of Israeli society was trust that the state could largely keep people safe despite the regional hostility. That has changed. A recent poll suggests that 2/3 of Israelis are extremely concerned or frightened, and more than 4/5 see the attack as a failure of the government.
Those poll numbers sound shocking, but are they? Dalia Scheindlin is a public opinion analyst focusing on peace and conflict research in Israel.
They are pretty shocking considering that it's very rare for Israelis to have any sort of consensus. This is a perennially divided society. It's been politically and socially divided since the start of statehood. But then again, we are in unusual times, and I think Israelis are going through that together in the sense that the state has let them down.
Getting out of Israel has been difficult since the attack. Many flights have been cancelled. But along with foreigners, Israelis are leaving, even if only for a while. Noah and Shani don't know yet where they might go if they decide to leave.
Our considerations is, does the government is pro-Israel, and the population, is it Muslim, like most Muslim, Christians, Jews, where we have an a big Israeli community? Those will be the consideration we will take. It's ironic that now we need to find a safe place outside of Israel. And this is the big dilemma, because in our soul, we do feel safe here, but in reality, it's not safe.
Their dearest hope is to raise their babies in peace. But they say growing anti-Semitism worldwide means it is increasingly difficult to say where that might be.
Well, ever since the 7th of October, many people have analyzed how the Hamas was able to catch the Israeli Defense Forces off guard. Another aspect and factor at play over here is that of cryptocurrency, and cryptocurrency's role in terrorist financing and funding these terrorist groups that has now come under renewed scrutiny following the deadly attack in Israel. Here's a report. Take a look.
There has been a lot of focus on how crypto is used to fund terrorist organizations and militant groups. So since the Palestinian militant group Hamas launched an attack on Israel at the start of October, the role of crypto in funding militant groups and terror organizations has really come into the spotlight. Hamas itself has been known to raise money via cryptocurrencies. Over the past few weeks, the Israelis have frozen several cryptocurrency wallets it said were linked to Hamas. Many people say that crypto is an extremely useful tool for these kind of organizations. It's largely anonymous. The money that anyone sends over the blockchain, that's the technology that underpins cryptocurrency, is usually just identified by a string of letters and numbers. It's difficult to track, and this means that for militant groups or terrorists seeking to raise money, crypto has become a very popular tool. Now, it's not completely anonymous. Cryptocurrency companies, that means exchanges, as well as law enforcement organizations, can actually work out who is sending the money, but it takes a bit of work for them to do that. The United Nations official said in 2022 that about 5% of terror attacks were considered to be financed by cryptocurrencies. A variety of cryptocurrencies are known to be used by terrorist groups and militant groups to raise funds. That said, while Bitcoin is popular, stablecoins, that's a type of cryptocurrency that's designed to keep a very steady value, have become more popular in recent years. There are also a number of other sources that these groups use to raise funds. That's anything from charities, shell companies, investments overseas to also raise funds. So crypto is definitely part of the mix, but it's very difficult to say exactly what proportion.
Well, now shifting our focus from the Israel-Hamas war back to some domestic politics, where the semi-finals of the 2024 elections, as it were right around the corner. You've got Mizoram, you've got Madhya Pradesh, you've got Telangana, you've got Rajasthan, and you've got Chhattisgarh coming up. News from these poll-bound states. Well, now the Bharatiya Janata Party on Friday released its manifesto for the upcoming assembly elections in Mizoram. One of the major focus of the Bharatiya Janata Party manifesto seems to be women empowerment. Now the party has come out with several promises in this very regard. There is a promise of 33% reservation for women in government jobs in the state. Apart from this, the manifesto also proposed free education to all girl students and a cumulative financial assistance of rupees 1.5 lakhs to every girl child. The elections in Manipur are all set to take place on the 7th of November. Beg your pardon, the elections in Mizoram are all set to take place on the 7th of November. Meanwhile, the counting will take place on the 3rd of December. So another set of promises by the Bharatiya Janata Party ahead of the Mizoram Assembly elections. Modi for Mizoram seems to be the tagline for the Bharatiya Janata Party in the poll-bound state of Mizoram. The elections are going to take place on the 7th of November. The counting will take place on the 3rd of December. Meanwhile, focus on women and girl empowerment. The manifesto that has been put forth by the Bharatiya Janata Party has proposed free education for all girl students and a cumulative financial assistance of 1.5 lakh rupees to every girl child. The Bharatiya Janata Party releases its manifesto for the Mizoram polls. Well, from Mizoram, let's shift our focus to what's happening in Karnataka. Congress MLA Ravi Kumar Gowda said that Karnataka's Deputy Chief Minister D.K. Shivakumar will replace Siddaramaiah as the Chief Minister of the state. Shivakumar became the Chief Minister of Karnataka after 2.5 years of the Siddaramaiah-led government's tenure, stirring up political controversy. Now, Siddaramaiah and Shivakumar both laid the claim for the chief ministerial post soon after the Congress party inflicted a huge defeat on the Bharatiya Janata Party in the assembly elections recently by winning 135 seats in the state of Karnataka. Will Shivakumar become the chief minister after 2.5 years? Is it set in stone, or is it something for the high party and the high command to now rummage through? Well, we'll have to wait and find out. Focus on other international developments. Police authorities in the U.S. state of Maine on Friday said that the suspect in the Lewiston City mass shooting, Robert Card, has been found dead. As per initial reports, Robert Card died due to a self-inflicted gunshot wound. A suicide note has also been recovered by the police. However, the note did not give any specific motive for the shooting. This comes 48 hours after the horrific mass shooting that left 18 people dead and another 13 injured. On Wednesday, Robert Card, who was a military reservist in the U.S. Army, opened fire inside a bowling alley and then went to a nearby bar, resulting in 18 deaths. The deceased in the horrific shooting ranged from age 14 to age 76.
So at 7:45 this evening is when Mr. Card was located. I won't give you an exact address. It was near the river along Androscoggin in Lisbon Falls was the actual location. That all remains to be seen, right? So our reality is that we found that body at 7:45 and it's 10:25 now. So there continues to be a lot of work that needs to be done here at the scene with the medical examiner's office. And now Russia conducted missile launches as a rehearsal for a massive retaliatory nuclear strike, aligning with the U.S. stance on a test ban treaty. Moscow moved to revoke its ratification of the treaty amid tensions over Ukraine. President Vladimir Putin's approval is still pending.
The move raises concerns about a potential arms race and further nuclear tests worldwide. Have a look at the report.
Russia says these missile launches are part of a successful rehearsal for a massive retaliatory nuclear strike. That's how Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu characterized it to President Vladimir Putin in footage aired on Russian state TV. It's a show of force that coincides with Moscow moving quickly to revoke its ratification of a treaty banning nuclear tests. A de-ratification bill unanimously passed Russia's upper house of parliament on Wednesday. Putin will have the final sign-off. Russia has the world's largest nuclear arsenal and currently sees itself in an existential standoff with the West over Ukraine. Moscow says revoking the treaty's ratification will line it up with Washington's stance. The U.S. signed, but has never ratified the same document. If the United States continues to take no steps to fulfill its obligations, then this agreement will remain a sham. Upper House Speaker Valentina Matvienko told lawmakers. While the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty has never formally come into force, it has made nuclear testing taboo. Russia carries out exercises to test its so-called nuclear triad from time to time. The U.S. also carries out regular drills. Arms control experts say a test by either side could spark a new arms race and trigger more tests from other countries. Moscow says it has no plans to start testing unless Washington does it first.
Moving on, California's Department of Motor Vehicles suspended GM's self-driving car company, Cruise, ordering its robo-taxis off the road in San Francisco because they posed an unreasonable risk to public safety.
California's Department of Motor Vehicles suspended GM's self-driving car company, Cruise, on Tuesday, ordering its robo-taxis off the road in San Francisco because they posed a, quote, unreasonable risk to public safety. That's according to a statement from the state's DMV that said Cruise had misrepresented information related to the safety of its autonomous technology. The suspension, effective immediately, is a major setback for General Motors and comes after a series of accidents involving Cruise vehicles. Cruise said the DMV reviewed an incident on October 2nd when one of its self-driving vehicles was putting on the brakes but did not avoid striking a pedestrian who had previously been struck by a hit-and-run driver. Cruise said that in that incident, a human driver, quote, tragically struck and propelled the pedestrian into the path of the autonomous vehicle, which struck the pedestrian. GM CEO Mary Barra, who has previously said Cruise represents a giant growth opportunity, said its robo-taxis have better safety records than human drivers. Shares of GM ended more than 2% lower on Tuesday.
Using large drones and millions of seeds, UAE's energy company, Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, is hoping to accelerate its forestation program in Abu Dhabi. UAE aims to work on reaching its 2030 target of planting 10 million mangrove seedlings.
Rapidly emerging technology under the umbrella term AI seems to be changing a number of fields, from transportation to brain surgery. Proponents say it could make our lives safer or more efficient. But what about the arts, where working faster or better isn't always the point, and where an artist's greatest asset is often their uniquely human touch? Artist and researcher Songwen Chung believes that there is room for innovation in the studio as well. She says she's pushing the boundaries of creative work alongside AI.
I've worked with computer vision and public cameras to think about ways drawing can expand and how the mark made by hand can shape and be shaped by the mark made by machine.
Chung was born in Hong Kong and brought up in Toronto by an opera-singing father and a mother who programmed computers. Now she collaborates with a variety of painting robots, sometimes in front of live audiences. The artwork they create together can sell for as much as tens of thousands of pounds. The machines are named DUG, Drawing Operations Unit Generation. They study the artist's hand-drawn gestures and synchronously draw along.
What I love about the project is it's not really one of control or repetition or sequencing. There is an overhead camera in the work that reads my gestures in space when I'm making the work. There's a neural network that drives, in one of the generations, there's a neural network that's trained on 2 decades of my own drawing data that responds to the mark I make on the canvas. It really creates an embodied linkage between myself and the robotic system that isn't pre-sequenced, that isn't sort of pre-controlled, and I think in that way we're able, the system, the robotic units, myself, are able to respond in order to make an image. So it's I like to think of it as a kind of embodied AI system that reads myself in the space as one of the prime collaborators.
By taking robotic arms, typically associated with manufacturing of cars or microchips, and repurposing them in a creative space, Chung says she aims to challenge people's ideas about the limits of robotics and AI.
Obviously, the arm is quite interesting, as I think I think it has a presence in culture as an icon of industrial automation, and I'm repurposing that iconography in a way, that motif, for being a presence that is collaborative and improvisational and meant for making artworks.
Chung is regarded as a pioneer of human and machine collaboration and has been showcased around the world. She was named as one of the 100 most influential people in AI on the inaugural Time 100 AI list for 2023 under the Innovator category.
Well, moving on, take a look at this one. In the heart of Bangkok, this Thai cafe isn't clowning around when it comes to Halloween. The cafe offers a range of themed treats, including beverages like unicorn blood and a featured brain cake as well. What sets this cafe apart is its own staff members who dress up as spooky characters like clowns, witches, and wizards. Customers also join in the fun by wearing their Halloween costumes as well. Despite the macabre appearance of the dishes and the drinks, customers find them surprisingly tasty as well. This cafe offers a unique Halloween dining experience for those looking to celebrate the season with a spooky twist. Well, now that's a dining experience. Meanwhile, taking a look at some news from the world of business. The Tata Group is all set to manufacture Apple iPhones in India, as the Minister for Information and Technology, Rajiv Chandrasekhar, informed the same through his social media. According to a statement shared by the minister, the Taiwan-based iPhone manufacturer Wistron Infocom has approved the domestic and global sales of its Indian manufacturing units to Tata Group for an estimated $125 million. Well, climate-centric stories coming up next. And in the national capital, the air quality of Delhi continues to remain in the poor category, with the air quality index on Saturday morning being recorded at 286. In the adjoining Noida, the air quality index stood at 255, with the quality remaining in the poor category as well. In Gurugram, The air quality was slightly better, with the AQI in the moderate category. Now, to tackle the increasingly worsening air quality, Delhi has been put under the second phase of the Graded Response Action Plan. Additionally, the Delhi government's Red Light On, Gaadi Off campaign was implemented on the 26th of October. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Top Stories. Lots more coming right on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
BrahMos. Stealthy, lethal, precise. It flies at 3 times the speed of sound and cuts through a